So what was it like to be related to the Bonanno crime family? Find out in today's Mafia Monday episode, where we look at how Joseph Massino earned his nickname, Joe the Cigar, and why he ended up making the ultimate sacrifice for the family. Joseph Michael Massino was born on December 26, 1935, in Brooklyn, New York, but his family would move to Westbury, Long Island, when he was just a baby. His father worked as a baker, and apparently he had a really good product. Even former mobster Michael Francesi said that, even to this day, he still dreams about the taste of his Italian bread. That was until the family moved to Manhattan, when Joseph was 11 years old. His father continued his trade by opening a bakery on East 94th Street between Lexington and Park Avenues. The family lived above the bakery, and young Joseph was said to have been a model child. There were no problems until he reached high school. He soon dropped out, which led to him having frequent arguments with his father. So he decided to leave home. And at age 16, he joined the United States Marine Corps. While in the service, he received training as an MP, a military policeman. This would prove useful later in life. After his discharge, he returned to New York City and began working for his father. But he also got involved in some local street racing. It was during this time that he picked up the nickname Joe the Cigar. Because of his love of fast cars and fast women, he started associating with some unsavory characters. One of them was a man named Anthony Aldericio, who had connections to the Lucchese crime family. When Alderici went to prison, Massino became friends with his brother-in-law, Joseph DeVito, a member of the Bonanno crime family. Massino quickly fell in with the family and soon became friendly with their boss, Joseph Bonanno, according to Massino himself. It was around this time that Bonanno approached him and asked if he wanted to become a made man in the family. But Massino turned it down. He didn't want that kind of life. So Bonanno let him be a capo in the family instead. In 1961, Massino married a woman named Victoria Boliteri, and they wound up having 3 children. However, it was a rough start to married life, as he was arrested twice in the first year. Once for illegal possession of a weapon, and another time for robbery. In the second case, he actually testified against his accomplice. The robberies he committed included stick-ups, convenience stores, grocery stores, and other small businesses. He also committed several burglaries. And in one case, he and 2 accomplices broke into a house and assaulted its owner. At one point, he was pulled over for imitating a police car. During the stop, an officer found some stolen license plates in his possession. In another incident, he crashed a stolen vehicle and then fled the scene. On top of all that, he committed arson. He even set fire to his own car to collect insurance money. It seemed he could commit any crime except murder. But while he was able to avoid prison in most of these cases, he was sentenced to 4 to 12 years in state prison for the burglary. He served his time at Greenhaven State Prison, and upon his release in 1972, he was once again welcomed back into the Bonanno family. He was now close friends with Philip Rusty Rustelli, who was Bonanno's underboss. And now that he was back, he was involved in more crimes. In 1978, he participated in an attempted extortion of a New Jersey mobster named Anthony Salerno. 2 years later, he was arrested for unlawful possession of a weapon, after police found 2 handguns in his car. Again, he avoided jail time. Then, in 1980, he and several others kidnapped a man named John Favara, who was the brother-in-law of Bonanno crime family capo Paul Castellano. The problem was that Favara had testified in a case involving Castellano. The family had sent Massino and others to get him, took him to an isolated area, and tortured him for information. Sadly, after a few days, they drowned him in a nearby river. While Massino wasn't directly involved in the murder, he was charged with it and pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter. Justice finally caught up to him as he was sentenced to 25 years in prison. He served his time at Greenhaven State Prison once again. But he was released in 1988. Now that he was out, he planned on starting a new life. In fact, he had already purchased a house in Florida and moved his family there. He even attended church and spoke to a priest about his past life of crime. He had no plans to return to the family. Sometimes you can never escape your past. In 1990, he was called to testify in the trial of Anthony Center, who was a soldier in the Genovese crime family. Apparently, Center had taken a secret lie detector test in a civil case involving the Gambino crime family and their then-boss, Paul Castellano. Messino was called to the stand to rebut the results of the test. But before he could take the stand, Messino himself was arrested. Turns out the government was offering him a deal, immunity from prosecution in exchange for his testimony against Sentner. And because of his past association with the Bonanno family, he knew things that the government didn't. For example, he testified that Sentner and another mobster named Matthew Madonna had assaulted a man named Francis Guerrara. Why? Well, Guerra was the brother of a woman who was dating a guy named Anthony Fat Tony Dukes. Dukes had been in a fight with Center over money. But Messino's problems weren't over yet. In 1991, he was indicted for racketeering and drug conspiracy charges. He testified against his former friends in the Bonanno family and helped bring down the entire family in the massive 1992 Mafia Commission trial. Some of the men he testified against were his former boss, Joseph Messino, Philip Rusty Rustelli, Anthony Exotero, and Dominic Trinchera. He testified that he was present during meetings that took place in the late 1980s, where bosses from 5 families met to discuss illegal activities. He also testified in the 1993 racketeering trial of Anthony Casso. All of this has led many people to believe that Messino became a rat willingly. But according to his attorney, that wasn't the case. Instead, he was given no other choice. If he didn't cooperate, the government had enough evidence to prosecute him for murder. It seems that Messino was indeed involved in the death of John Favara. And since he had already been convicted of manslaughter, the evidence used against him in the trial would have been enough to convict him of murder. Therefore, he had no choice but to cooperate. The government relocated Messino to the Witness Protection Program and changed his name to Charles H. Bitto. But wherever he went, his reputation preceded him, and people knew who he really was. He tried to keep a low profile, but it didn't work. He was arrested twice for weapons violations, and once for trying to bribe a police officer. He was also questioned in another murder investigation, but no charges were ever filed. In 2004, he was shot outside of his home in Fort Lee, New Jersey. He survived the attempt on his life, but he blamed the Bonanno family for it. He claimed that they wanted revenge for his cooperation against them. But in reality, it was likely that someone else wanted him dead. See, Messino had gotten himself in trouble in the Witness Protection Program for those weapons violations and the bribery incident. And it's likely that someone found out who he was and wanted revenge. Joe the Cigar died on September 26, 2019, at the age of 83. He was still in the Witness Protection Program at the time, and his death is officially listed as a homicide. But honestly, who knows? Maybe the Bonanno family finally got their revenge. Alright guys, that's all for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave me a comment below letting me know what you thought. If you're not already subscribed, please go ahead and do so. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.